extensible HTML. So the first thing is, in a to-do list app, you probably want to have a form where you can actually send a list item. It should have an So I have my input device, input name item. That's a bad name. Name list item. ID equals list item. Oh, we actually don't need the ID. So we put a label around that, and we give that label a name. So we actually say add new item. Or we say item. And then we need a submit button. A lot of times you will see people doing like HTML demos and like, oh, you don't need that, the browser does all of that automatically for you, it's not a problem whatsoever. But everything here has a sense. The UTF-8 means if this thing ever becomes Chinese or Japanese or whatever, it will display properly. That should be the first thing. You define your font. So you actually show all kind of cool fonts. Viewport width, device width. Super important. As soon as you put this thing on a mobile phone, it would stretch to the width of the mobile phone and not be like somewhere in the corner and you have to scroll in and zoom in. That's basically for that. Style type text CSS. Style goes into the head, so all the styling gets applied before the document gets rendered. JavaScript goes to the end of the document because it doesn't stop the rendering while it's executing. It should be the last thing to go. If you write this right, you don't need that. So when your JavaScript fails, your interface should still do something. And that's what we do with that. So now I got a form, and then I actually just need an output list to actually, this one I give an ID to make it easier, of the to-do items. So now that does nothing because I'm not doing the server-side component. But in JavaScript, I now start actually getting access to these things. Instead of reading continuously from the DOM, and I see this in jQuery all the time, when people say like, hash so-and-so, do this. Further down the line, hash so-and-so, do this. Hash so-and-so, do this. Cache all that. You don't need access to that any longer. Every single time you access the DOM, you're hurting the browser. You make sure that you only do it as only once if possible. So we cache all that in like input equals document query selector input. That's all we need. Document query selector is exactly the same that we have in jQuery with the dollar or the jQuery object. Not exactly because the jQuery object does everything, but this one actually allows you to get access to everything in the document the same way. So you can put a class in there, you can put a hash in there, any CSS selector. So in this case, I get the first input element because I use query selector. You can do query selector all. That would give you all query input elements. And then I can say var submit equals, no, actually I don't need it, var form equals document query selector form. A lot of people will do a click handler on the submit button to submit the form. That means no keyboard user can ever use your thing. If you put a submit handler on the form, it doesn't matter how it was submitted. If it was submitted with a click, with a touch, or with a keyboard, it works. So that's a much better way of doing it. That's why I'm getting a handle to the form rather than to the submit element. So to be safer as well, I can actually do the input as the form query selector input. So I get the first one in there. If I had another input outside another form, it would not be the same anymore. And then I need a handler to the list item, which is just a list form query selector hash to do. Now I need to have a submit handler that actually realizes that something was entered and add it to the list. So I say form add event listener submit function I'm so good today. Event, false. Then I call event prevent default at the end of that. That means now, when the form is submitted, jump into this and don't do anything. Don't send the form to the server. Don't try to load anything. It happens. And this is all you need. Add event listener is not supported by old Internet Explorer. So you put later on, when we finally clean up that document, we do a test for add event listener around that thing. Nothing. Internet Explorer sends the thing to the server. Your PHP, Ruby, Python, ASP.NET, JSP, whatever you want to use should deal with that. Like, no need to actually fix that for Internet Explorer, old Internet Explorer anymore. So what we do on add event listener is we actually get the value of the input. Is input value. And then we add to the inner HTML of the to-do. So we say list inner HTML plus equals list item plus value. That's how easy we actually started having a to-do list going on here. So if I start trying that out, wherever I put it to-do HTML. It's beautiful, isn't it? So I say wash elephant, and it doesn't do anything, which means we have an error somewhere, or not. Whoa. Type error, list is null. So list is null is list form query selector to do, because it's not in the form, it needs to be document. And now we got it. Now we got a to-do list. Of course, problem now, empty to-do lists. And this is where it gets interesting. Yesterday in the JavaScript HTML group in Facebook, there was this like guy that posted like, oh, how to do server client-side validation in forms, and it was a Java forum something. It was like 6,000 different ways of doing it, all like very complex JavaScript. Here's my solution. Input type input required. As soon as you put in required in an HTML5 capable browser, it actually will tell you that something is going wrong. It gives you a red arrow around it as well if it's empty, which you can style as well. And it will not do it any longer. This looks different from browser to browser, which is annoying for designers, but it's actually really good for end users because they see already it's an error. It's not like they get used to it looking like that. So, and this is all you need, because the required actually will not send off the form. So I don't even need an event handler on the form if that error is in there. So my whole functionality to do validation of the elements is not needed any longer, because I just have that in HTML by now. And think about that as saving a lot of time there. Now, the next thing we want to do is when you click an item to actually tick it off as done. And when you click it a second time, delete it. That's how to-do lists work. Or, I mean, delete it, you could also put it somewhere else, but in this case, to make it simple, we just delete it. Now, the jQuery way of doing that normally would be now to put an event handler on each of the list items. Like form to-do li on, and then do this and that. You only need one handler. Every event handler costs memory. Every single event handler needs to be removed as well. So make it as easy as possible. So what we do here is we just do a list event handler on click, and we can do a later one on touch as well. And then we actually find out what has been clicked, and we do that by reading out the target. Event target. So now what I do is I just click on any of these items. And when I click on them, it doesn't do anything. No, it does. It just takes a while. It actually gets the different list items that I have. So I am on this item right now. The reason is that events bubble down. Basically, when I click on a list element, it goes up to the UL, it goes up to the body, it goes up to the window, and then it goes back up to a list element. And everything in between gets notified that there was an event. So all you have to do is compare which one was clicked right now, and that instead of just doing a handler for each of them. So what I can do is, like, the event target is the list item that I'm clicking on. So if I say I clicked it once, I just put a class on it. Again, I could put a data element in there, I could put all kind of stuff in there, but a class is a simple thing because then I can start styling it. So I can say event target, class list, add, done. So if I now define in CSS something else, so if I can say like li done or just done. Now let's do li done. I can send the background to gray, for example. I now do my elements here again, click on them, and the ones that have that class become gray. Now, if I want to delete them, which means the second click, all I have to do is test if they already have a class on them. I don't need another handler, I don't need anything else. So all I need to do in my handler here again is saying like, if event target, what the hell? If event target class list contains done. Then event target parent node remove child. So this is where it gets stupid to use event target. So we say like var t equals event target. And then I define that here, here, here. I say t parent node remove child. The joy of DOM coding, t. That would do it every time though, so we actually have to test the first time if it does not contain the done. So if we say if t class node contains done, then we add it. If not, do an else, we can actually remove it. Let's try that out. Eek. Syntax error, missing out the condition. Okay, where are we the problem? Contains done, closed. Click it once, make it gray. Click it twice, remove it. 5 lines of JavaScript more or less right now. This is how simple things are. Add and remove classes to things. Leave the look and feel to CSS. Just leave the functionality to CSS if you wanted to as well. Now, big problem here, like what element, we have a list element already that has wash in there. We want to have the same list element twice as well. How can we make sure that that doesn't happen? So the normal way of doing that, you could be going in it and list and loop through all the list items and compare their content with what we had before. But actually what I find very simple in that is just having a cache that says that is just an object. So when I actually have a new element here, I can actually say cache value is true. And that one means that I cannot want that thing twice. It's like basically by using the key instead of a value, I never have to loop it because it can become the key of it. So if I now do a test here if that exists already, so if cache value if not cache value, send it to true and do the other stuff. Otherwise, don't do anything because you got the item already. You can put some error handling in there and just show a label or something like that. That's fine as well. So now it should not be possible for me to put wash in there twice, but a wash elephant would work. As simple as that. As it's only strings, we don't have a problem with that. Like, okay, UTF-8 characters, maybe you have to do some like cleaning up of it, but it's not really that much of an issue. Wash car, clean that up, and make that thing. Now, problem is, every time I reload this, I don't have my content any longer. What do we have with the content? So, simplest way, local storage. So what we can say is, every time I send it down here, I can say like, this worked. So I can say local storage, my to-do, and now it gets dirty, but it actually works. Does it? Yeah, doesn't matter. Local storage my to-do equals list inner HTML. So I can use the inner HTML of it because it's a to-do list. It's not going to have millions of content in there. So now I actually use that in local storage. So if I now start wash car, local storage is not defined. And if I now check at local storage, my to-do, it has the inner HTML of wash here. So all I have to do is, on the first time I load the page, I can do if local storage my to-do is not empty, to-do inner HTML equals local storage my to-do. So now when I reload, I've got my wash thing in there already. If I now wash car, I reload, I have it in there. If I delete the thing and reload, I still have it because I haven't removed it from the thing. So on the event handler, if I remove it here, remove child, I also have to reset my local storage to do to list inner HTML. Or actually, in any case, I should do it because then it keeps the classes as well for me. So if I say I have an element here that I highlight and I reload it, it keeps the highlight for me. If I delete it and I reload, I have it reloaded. This is all the cool stuff we have in browsers nowadays. Like, I remember when I started as this, the local storage would have been like cookies or using a database in PHP or whatever. I mean, like, it was much harder to do these kind of things. And with the event handling and the required, I didn't have to do anything special there anymore. So now the functionality is more or less done. All I have to do now is make it prettier. And let's have a go at that. So let's say we do the background of the element as HTML body. Prevent default? No. Background equal is linear gradient from to top from 0 to 333, and background is black for all the others. We also make it 100% hide. And now we got a, ooh, look, it's black, it's cool. We don't really need the item when we display it on the screen, but it's important for screen readers for accessibility. Because if you don't have a label, then it actually doesn't tell you what's going on. So, how can we do this? Yeah, I just normally have a label with a connection and I just hide it, so let's do that. Because as I nested it, I didn't have to have an ID on the list item, but that's fine. So we close the label here instead of the other one, and we do an ID of list item, and we say label 4 equals list item. If you're not sure what a label does for you, that's one thing, is that screen readers will know what it is. It also means I can click on that text now to get into that form field. And that for checkboxes and radio boxes is incredibly important, because I can actually click the text rather than finding the little thing on my mobile phone. So labels are incredibly important and incredibly useful that way. But in this case, we on a screen we actually don't want to show it, so we can just say label position absolute and move it off the screen. Left minus 1000 pixels. That one will still make it available for screen readers, but it doesn't show up on the screen any longer. We're fine. Yeah, placeholder is a different thing though. Placeholder tells the user what is expected to go into that input element. It's not a description of what it is. So, for example, the label would be credit card, and the placeholder would be 1234-6789, and so on and so forth. This is the difference between the two. A lot of times you will see people using the label as the placeholder and switching it out. That's a designer not understanding accessibility. But it's used a lot of times. The same way when people have a title and an alt attribute, it's the same thing on an image. One of them is supposed to be the replacement for the image when it can't be loaded, and the other one gives extra information to explain what the image is. So there's subtle differences between those, but actually it works out. No, it doesn't hide it. It hides some screen reader as well then. Opacity 0 is another one, but then it actually just still keeps the space. So the off left is still the simplest way of doing it. No, it will totally hide it. It will not be available anymore for you. Text indent and overflow is another option to do it that actually hides it from the screen, but not from screen readers. But the problem with that one is that basically you're dependent on the length of this ring. So the intent is shifting it off in the box, whereas the other one shifts it completely. So minus 1000 is quite safe because you won't have a 1000 label, not even in German. But with the overflow, I don't know. There's many ways of doing that. The font size 0 is another one that people used, and all of them have different quirks in different browsers as well. Yeah. The fallback is that you do a server-side code. Seriously, it's like it's the browsers that don't support required are basically Internet Explorer 8 downwards, I think, and all the others do it. Yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah, so basically IE8, IE9, and iOS, all the others. Oh God, really iOS? So yeah, if you target iOS, you probably want to do a test the validation thing as well, and do like an error handler yourself. If you target all the others on desktop, not needed. Because the problem with JavaScript validation is that people rely on it. Like, hey, I validate my JavaScript so you cannot send off the form if you don't enter the right things. Okay, I have a command line. I have curl. I can send whatever I want into your form. It's like if your only security is JavaScript, I can always turn that off. So you need a server-side value of these things anyways, because in the end, with the to-do list, this one stores it only on the device now. But I want to sync it in the cloud with my other devices as well. Sooner or later, you will have to put it somewhere. And this could be a cloud service. It doesn't have to be a backend. You could just have a CORS handler to do an XHR to a cloud service and store it there. But there has to be a fallback for non-JavaScript every single time. And in packaged apps, maybe not, because they are actually in an environment that's fixed. But it just drives me crazy when people say everybody has JavaScript turned on. Because yes, everybody has JavaScript turned on if everything loads, if everything works out. It was very funny the other day when Facebook released that internet.org. That do-good site about the internet. We're bringing the internet to everybody, and basically it says like that they're working with lots and lots of companies to bring connectivity to the third world that actually makes sure that people can access the internet. So it works with Opera and Ericsson to actually pre-cache a lot of content, like Opera used to do with China and Russia already. And it was ironic to me that a website that is meant to bring connectivity to everybody has a background video playing, is immensely huge. And the fun thing about mine was it's like, cause let's try how huge it is. So internet.org, inspect element in Chrome, do a network, cache, kill the cache. So 300K transferred, that's actually not bad. 42 requests, we can do better. That's still 42 DNS lookups, 42 connections. Like, it's something on a slow connection would be really annoying. That's really cool how they did that with that video, it seems. Like, where's the video? Good thing we got developer tools. Let's take a look. That's a lot of divs. A lot of divs. Video, Dragon AK, and JPEG. What? Cool. Don't see the resources anywhere. That's really interesting. But my favorite thing was I have this this content blocker normally turned on, the disconnect, that actually blocks all ads and blocks all tracking cookies and stuff like that. So for the website that brings connectivity to the world, non-JavaScript was available for me. And I was like, what is going on there? And the reason is that the website actually serves the JavaScript from the ad servers of Facebook. Which makes me wonder a bit, you know, like, I guess they're like, oh, the infrastructure is there, it works out already. I mean, the site still works to a degree, but it's just, if everything is dependent on your JavaScript to load, that's not good. That's not the web to me. This is like, one JavaScript error is very simple to do. Like one bad ad on your page that doesn't really do a checking properly, and then you have no content, that's not right. So this is what we have been required. So iOS is the only issue I think here, and I still think it's a very good idea to do it.
I mean, probably like 5-6 years back, we had that things should be working without JavaScript, unobtrusive JavaScript. But nowadays it's more of like, okay, if people are not having JavaScript support, then
no, I totally and utterly disagree. I think it's total bullshit. You cannot expect people to have JavaScript turned on, because JavaScript it's not a 1 and 0. It's not JavaScript on or off. There's so many things that can go wrong in JavaScript. One simple typo means you don't have any content. You did not render your website completely in PHP. You had a mixture of HTML and PHP as well. So basically, if something on the server broke, you didn't just have an empty page. And with JavaScript, it's exactly the same thing. The only time you can be dependent on JavaScript is when you define the environment. Like inside a packaged Chrome application, inside a packaged Firefox OS application, an application running inside Facebook, an application that is an add-on to Chrome, to Gmail, an application that is part of another framework that already works in JavaScript. Fine. Everything else, you will have users that will have a problem. One single JavaScript not loading and having an error means that the rest of your page is not done. And it's not about like adding extra work. It's about making it useful. When you start with a sensible HTML, you don't need the JavaScript to work. It still works. And your JavaScript becomes much, much smaller as well if you start with a sensible HTML. We're very happy to start with like, okay, let's use this JavaScript library, create body, create this, build this, build this. We're building actually the HTML in JavaScript, which is like you write Java, which is like you write C#, which is like as you write Cocoa or whatever. But we don't need to if we already write the HTML the right way. So my favorite is Google just released this accessibility course. And the first part of the course explains to you how to use 2 divs and style them properly and make them screen reader accessible. And hey, this is about accessibility. First of all, screen readers is one part of accessibility. You got people who can't use a mouse, you got people who are deaf, you got people who cannot read, you got people with all kind of problems. Connectivity is a disability sometimes. So using a button element means you don't have to actually make it work with the screen reader because it works with a screen reader because the button element was made for that. So a lot of times we rely on JavaScript because we just don't understand what things do. And we don't just want to understand, we just want to use JavaScript immediately. And I see it all the time here. I mean, I can't use Facebook in the hotel here. The hotel is a 5-star hotel. Because Facebook, the connection is so bad that DNS lookup on 3 JavaScript fails, Facebook is not available. If Facebook were a form with an HTML page around it, I could still send off my updates. Twitter works, because Twitter is a form. So let's get not too excited about the things we can do in JavaScript and tell our users what to do, because sooner or later you will be on the receiving end of that and think like, okay, now my site is completely not available, and it's just a very, very bad experience. So we have another half hour for lunch. Instead of me styling this, how about I put it on a JS Fiddle and you have a go? You all have your computers with you? That's good. Most of you. So let's put the code in there. Maybe it's not that much of a good idea. Wow. It's not JS Fiddle itself, is it? No. Okay. JavaScript. Let's make sure it works in there before I make you do things and then they don't work. Undefined. Good. Okay, the local storage won't work, but that's you can just hard code some content in there. There you go. Think about the list item stuff, think about the end child stuff, what you can do with that. And yeah, some nice transitions. As you can see, I'm really good in reading my emails. So I can see who's a nice designer and who isn't.
Sorry, not that.
Oh, you need wireless. Oh, the undefined didn't come through. So if you still got the undefined error, the way to fix it was basically instead of doing the if local storage to do, this is the way to fix it, to have not an undefined coming out. Everybody going at it? Cool. I can have a go as well. So when you save it for yourself, it should not override it. It should create a new one every single time. So type submit. Here's what I got to. It's not hard. It's just trusting that it works is the thing problem. I think I thought when as a web developer that has been around for a long time, I'm always like, okay, I can do this, but is it gonna work? Just do it. Just try it out. Also, when you work on a Mac, everything is beautiful, and then you look at it on Windows machine, you're like, oh, what did I do? What did I do? Look, font smoothing. How about that? No JavaScript. It all shall be revealed after lunch. It's now, isn't it? Okay, whoever wants lunch is next door. I think. Should turn off my microphone while I'm eating lunch.